All right, welcome to this week of Done This Week podcast. This is our third show. We've got a bit of a got a bit
Momentum. We got a bit of
momentum. That's the word. And so yeah, we're getting into a good rhythm here. I'm having like a ton of fun doing this, and it's been like a really good exercise. I think on like a weekly sort of thing, planning out the episode. It's been awesome.
Yeah, I think once you get past episode 3, you're there.
I think you're in like the 99% of podcasts.
Probably.
Past podcast episode 3. But yeah, anyway, what did you get done this week?
I've had a bit of a boring week. We're launching a new website, so it's been a lot of like copywriting, fixing buttons, stuff like that. So yeah, just mainly focused on that and then some product stuff.
What's the copywriting process like? Are you using like a lot of AI stuff or?
No, I mean, what I have been doing, because Wizza is like magic themed, is I'll kind of go into Chat GPT and say like, give me 50 words related to magic, or like, here's a sentence, make it like more magical or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'll do that a bit just to like come up with words that I wouldn't normally think of. But otherwise I feel like I just want to try to like explain things the way I would say it to someone. And so I think like me doing it just conversationally is the best, and talking it over with people. But yeah,
I think like that's honestly one of the best use cases for ChatGPT, at least for me. It's like, I think it's the best brainstorming partner because they come with unlimited ideas and you can just like mold them in whatever way you want. And it's kind of like a sparring partner that you're just going back and forth with. And I really enjoy it. I also watched today the OpenAI developer summit.
Yeah.
And there's like a lot of really cool things. I actually started building. So I had just posted the last episode, and I have a bunch of prompts for like helping me write descriptions for like what actually happened in the episode based on transcripts. And so I was like starting to get into building like an agent potentially for the podcast posting, where it's like I load in the transcript, I load in the clips, it gives me the description, it gives me the show notes and all that kind of stuff.
So is it like a templated GPT?
It's essentially a templated GPT where like you can pull in data from multiple sources, and like that was like a lot of the different product changes that came with the newest development pieces. Like one, they're completely like 16xing the amount of content that you can actually have as contextual content into a current prompt,
right?
And then also just opening up a lot of different avenues to actually bring content in. But I was scrolling on Twitter, and I saw like a bunch of people being like, OpenAI just killed my startup. OpenAI just killed my startup.
Right. Yeah.
But I think when you're kind of like building in like this fast moving out of industry, it's like, if you're enjoying that rocket ship growth that all of these, early wrappers for ChatGPT have enjoyed, you also have to expect that like, it's going to potentially come crashing down as fast, right?
Yeah. I mean, you cannot build an entire business on an API call to ChatGPT.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not surprised.
For sure.
What did you get done this week?
Honestly, just a lot of product work, a lot of kind of setting up a lot of the team members to start taking a lot more responsibility. Brought on a new head of operations, which has like been taking over like a lot of the stuff that I've just been like slacking on, which has been really, really great. And so not a lot of deep productive work. I'm working on a presentation. I'm going to Bangkok in December for Affiliate World. So like my mornings right now are just really trying to centralize information and lay out the talk, and laying out a keynote. It's like a lot of work. I'm kind of like mildly regretting accepting it, because I'm like, fuck, it's a lot of work.
What's the topic?
It's going to be how to get rid of creative burnout, specifically for TikTok ads. And so building operations and systems and inspiring creative thinking inside of your organization, so that one, idea generation, but also learnings from the ads that you're currently running are just like feeding into a funnel and like a flywheel of creating new content and optimizing performance. And then I also wrote our first like newsletter. I started writing this newsletter called AD&P, like advertising, design, and product. And we sent that out, and I got like I was like looking at the replies, and I got a ton of like really awesome feedback. And so that's been a lot of fun, and very similar to this podcast. I have like 2 spaces now on a week where what's falling on my shoulders is just like research and like learning and like being curious. And so I've really just enjoyed like both of those things, and writing, I think, is just like a really great way of solidifying what your thoughts are on a topic, and then being able to communicate them. So yeah, a bunch of that.
Cool. I watched a video this week that I found like super fascinating on a company called Dollar General. I'm sure you've heard
one
of
of
Dollar
your favorite
General.
stores, I assume.
Yeah. Well, we don't have it in Canada, but after hearing about them, I do need to go to one. So it's a crazy business model. So I took some notes here. So first of all, they do almost $40 billion in revenue. Roughly 5% of that's net profit. So somewhere around like $1 billion a year in profit. They add 2.5 stores per day in the United States alone. So they're adding like 800 or 900 stores per year. And their whole business model is that they go in areas that Walmart can't. So they're in certain towns with like an 800 person population, and they're able to generate a profit because they have insanely low rents. I think on average they spend less than $10,000 a month in rent for like a big store. They have insanely low costs. You want to guess what the average?
And so is the size of a Dollar General similar to like the size of a Walmart, or kind of comparable? Because like
smaller
the
than
dollar
a
stores in
Walmart.
Canada are like tiny.
Yeah, it's bigger than probably what we have
Okay.
here, but it's certainly smaller than a Walmart.
Okay.
Do you want to guess what the average Dollar General employee makes per year?
Average dollar. I don't even know what the average salary is. And is this like a full-time employee?
Yeah,
I don't know, like 30 or 40K.
$16,600.
Wow.
Yeah, because they're in these very small towns, where I guess maybe that's sufficient enough to live there.
Probably not.
Maybe not, or not. So and they're in these areas that they call food deserts. So these are towns where there is no grocery store. Even a grocery store can't operate profitably, and
Wow.
and a Dollar General franchise is able to do it. So they go to these like food deserts, population 700-800. They hire like 1 or 2 people, and what they do in their business model, which is smart, they only pretty much have one SKU for each. So if you want like laundry detergent, there's only Tide one size. Like that's what you get there. So it makes the business model very simple, and they're able to bring their prices down on that one unit. The other thing that's really interesting is because they're in these small towns where the income is very, very low, people actually need to manage their cash flow even when it comes to like laundry detergent, for example. So even though like a big thing of Tide might be like 20 cents a wash, they sell it in these $1 size, and it's like 60 cents per wash. But the people can't spend like the $12 on the big Tide. Wow. So they get the small little one to like manage their cash flow.
What was this video? Which was like a documentary, or was it just kind of like a breakdown, like one of those business breakdown videos?
So there's a channel I watch a lot of called Wendover.
Okay.
And they cover just like pretty much like random topics and just go like really deep on it, and like these like 20-minute like mini documentaries kind of. So they cover like a ton of information. It's not always like businesses, but obviously the business ones I find most interesting. What else? Yeah. So $1 versions of items, even though the cost is higher. I just think it's like an insane business, like to go after these small towns. And I don't think it exists here in Canada, and certainly not like in other countries. But it's smart because these people, like the closest grocery store or Walmart is like 30 or 45-minute drive away too.
Right. So even when you account for like gas or potentially something that's maybe cheaper or something like that, it just doesn't actually net out. And
Yeah.
So it's like they found like it's legitimately the definition of like a market opportunity, where it's
Right.
like a market has a desire and like they're serving it. So
Right.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, you got to operate it profitably because the town's 700 people. You only have
launching like 2 stores a day is like absolutely insane. Like
crazy.
The operational lift of that is probably wild.
Crazy.
I always like get turned off with like operationally complex businesses. Like it sounds cool, like they're cool headlines, but it's like, oh no, that's actually just like hell that you're living in consistently forever.
And you need to go to these small random towns. Like where do you even stay? They don't have hotels.
That being said, like I've started like the process in figuring out how I'm going to acquire my private pilot's license.
Okay.
And I don't know if you ever read Sam Walton's book of like Walmart. By the end of his like career, his main job was just to fly and find new locations, and like Walmart very quickly became a real estate company and not instead of selling product.
Right.
And so he had a private pilot's license, and he spent all of his final years at Walmart flying from small town to small town. And what he would do is he would like from the sky, and this is like before Google Maps and all of these things, he would start placing the Walmarts in between two cities. And like that was his strategy, where it was just like, instead of it putting in one city and then the other city had a 30-minute drive, he'd put it in between two cities, and then the two smaller cities would have like a 15-minute drive.
That's smart.
And he would start to like kind of triangulate.
And the rents are
Walmarts.
probably way cheaper.
The rent's probably way cheaper. And,
or the land at least.
but I just think that's like a super cool like arc of, if I were to think of, if I was like in my 50s or 60s, if I could just like fly around the United States of America by myself, I think that would be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's that. I mean, it's interesting. It's something you don't like, running an online business. You don't think of like the science to like where things are located. Like we're just people, we just go to places, but like I'm sure a ton of thinking goes into like why the Starbucks is exactly there, or why the Walmart's exactly there. So it's an interesting area.
It's an interesting problem to solve. And too, I have a little like company that I've been obsessing about, or at least a product. Do you have a Ninja Creami?
I don't have one.
Okay, you need to get you need to get a Ninja Creami. I got a Ninja Creami. One, I absolutely love ice cream. It's like my favorite treat that I could possibly have. Like if I could eat only two.
So
things,
what is a Ninja Creami?
Okay, a Ninja Creami is essentially a new version of a blender in which you take a canister, you put in whatever your base for the ice cream is going to be, but it also can be things that are healthy. Like I've been just doing protein shakes. And essentially you freeze the base inside of this, and so you freeze it for 24 hours, and then you put it into the machine, and there's a bunch of different settings, and it has a blade that has two different blades on it. One kind of plunders the material, and the other one shaves the material. And so you get this like shaving of the ice and then the plundering of it, which gives this creamy effect. Anyway, it's like an incredible product. Like 100% recommend buying one. Like I know there was a shortage, and they were going for like 4x on eBay like during the summer. And so I started like looking into kind of Ninja's product. And I love when products start to go viral on like TikTok and things like that. And I kind of dive into it. So what's really cool about the Ninja Creami is it wouldn't exist if a patent didn't expire. And so taking a long kind of like, road back to 1980, there was this Swiss Swiss-born engineer who was living in Brazil, and he was making ice cream in a similar way using a drill press. And so the way that Ninja Creami works is like the blade slowly works its way through. And so he was doing this with a drill press, and he created the Paco Jet. But he ended up being more of like an inventor rather than an entrepreneur. And so he sold it to some other company who, once they kind of like bought his patent and everything like that, they had realized it's really expensive to actually produce this machine. And so they ended up just like selling it into commercial kitchens. And so if you go to, a nice restaurant where you can get, house-made gelato, and you get those like little like scoops and stuff like that, they're probably using a Paco Jet because they've had a patent on this technology. And a Paco Jet costs around $6,500. But so the patent expired in 2017, and Ninja then kind of saw this patent expired, obviously developed the product and tried to figure out if they could make it a consumer product. And they launched it in 2021. And I feel like I didn't start actually hearing about this product until this year. And what's interesting about the Ninja it's called the Shark Ninja Jet Corporation. They actually went public this July as well. And so part of me is thinking like maybe that like Ninja was a well-known brand, but I think the Creami was like a massive success for them. And I was looking at their stock, and so like they lost like 36% from IPO, but it's regained 70% since August of this year. And so it's definitely like it's an amazing product, amazing company. And I like this idea generally of finding, solutions that exist in potentially markets that are outside of consumer, and then, democratizing them for the consumer. I think is like a really cool idea. And I was actually like thinking about this, if there's like a business actually in that as a core idea. The way I'm thinking about it is like, imagine if you had a database of all patents, when they're going to expire. And like, that's the easy answer. But then with like AI, you could even have now information about consumer trends, and then applying the current reality to old patents, and like starting to like iterate on business ideas, and essentially have like an endless stream of new ideas and opportunities of patents that might expire.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if that exists, a database of expiring patents.
I feel like that has to exist, because I feel like it's such like a core of so many businesses. Definitely like not in software, but in like hardware and things like that.
Or like medical. Like, so we talked about hair loss before, but Hims was started because finasteride, I think, was the brand name, whatever. The hair loss drug, that patent ran out. And so you could make like off-brand hair loss drugs, and that's what they started doing it and like shipping to people's doors. And they're, I think, $1 billion company. So there's definitely massive potential in like these expiring patents.
Yeah. I mean, now that like it's kind of like shifting towards winter and I'm starting to feel like the Toronto blues start, I'm like being a lot more analytical. One, I'm using the Ninja Creami less. And then two, I'm starting to be like a lot more analytical about like the city that I'm like living in. And I've been like thinking a lot about like what makes a good city. And like we both live in Toronto, although like most of the time we don't have winters. I think I'm gonna have more winter than I usually do this year. But I'm curious to hear like your gut reaction towards Toronto as a city, because you actually like grew up here. What do you like about it, and what do you don't like? What don't you like about it?
Well, first of all, I think it's a great city. Like, it's one of those things you grow up here and you think, oh, it's not a great city, and then I've spent some time in other cities now, and I'm like, no, Toronto's pretty good, especially outside of the winter. What I do like about it, I personally prefer big cities. I just feel more like myself in a big city. So, I mean, it's hard when not comparing it to another city, but I feel like there's still like a good amount of space in Toronto. There's a good, like, you're drivable to like ski hills.
I mean, bad ski hills.
Yeah, not the best skiing, but there's water. There's like, there's like a decent amount of nature here. I think.
Here's the thing. Here's my gripe with Toronto is exactly the way that you're reacting to it. It is so lukewarm about everything it does. Like, Toronto actually isn't great at anything. It is like a B player on all fronts and like C in some fronts, but like I think that's my biggest gripe with Toronto. One, it's like you're in Canada, which whatever.
Right.
Not the best, especially if you're an entrepreneur, not the best place to be. But I just like I find it hard to ever think like, okay, what is Toronto exceptional at? And it's like the answer to that I haven't actually found.
Well, I think if you ask like 99% of cities, they're gonna fail that test.
Do you feel like you hear people talk as admirably about Toronto though, as like, for example, New York?
No.
People hear it as like, I live here.
Yeah, people
like,
when people talk about New York, they're like, it's the greatest city in the world. But New York is so expensive to live that if you're spending that kind of money to live there, it's like a filter for you love it. Like,
right.
If you're lukewarm about it, leave, because you're paying like way too much money. And I think that's like a lot of big cities.
That's true.
But I think like being a B player in a lot of things is like a generally well-rounded city.
That's true. Yeah, no, I do have just like a love and hate relationship, and then the traffic's just getting really bad, and I feel like whoever's like designing our roads and making the decisions about that is a fucking idiot and should be fired.
I know there's some major road closures that have been brutal to deal with.
One last note on this: I think the thing that Toronto is missing, and then what I get in a lot of like U.S. cities, and this part might be that when you're traveling, you're more outgoing and stuff like that. I feel like we have a lack of. There's this idea about like third spaces. And it's what like a lot of European countries are like based around. It's just like the optimization of third space. And so the idea is like a third space is a place that's not your home and it's not your work, but it's a place that you go to, in which like time can pass passively. And it's like, we don't actually have that. Like, we don't have like really good coffee shops that are like spacious. Like, everything is kind of like a hole in the wall where like people actually are in and then out and they go to work. We don't really have like good like libraries or just like places where people can like congregate and either like experience things or just have like a space outside of the home. And I feel like that's the piece that's like missing from Toronto.
The gym. The gym is one. Like mine is the Granite, which is like a country club, I guess.
$50,000 membership fee.
Yeah.
So like generally for like this, I think that's the part is like there's a lack of just like these like central spaces in Toronto that are just like good. Like, and like an example would be like in the summer, like the waterfront ends up being one. Like, you can go to the waterfront, spend time and just be happy without having to like do a thing,
right?
Or like sign up for a thing or something like that. And I think we just like, it makes it hard when you have this like very vast like seasonality and between like summer and winter.
Yeah.
And things like
that. I mean, I do think that the city is so starkly different, like in the winter and the summer. Like, when I'm here in the summer, I'm like, why do I even leave here so much? Like, it's great.
It's great.
And then as soon as like, even now it's like dark at 5 o'clock, it's like, what am I doing here? So yeah, it's a love hate. Have you heard of this new pizza place that's opened in Toronto now, Prince Street?
Yeah, so I know it's like from LA or something like that, and I've been seeing a bunch of like influencers post that they're going to get pizza.
Yeah, I think it's from New York, or maybe both. Um, but my office is like very close to this new like, Prince Street pizza, and I'm noticing all around my office there's like empty pizza boxes just like on the floor in like kind of like prime
Like on the
locations along the
street,
sidewalk,
on the street
like
or on.
along the sidewalk, kind of like I'm like either everyone's just littering or this place is doing some kind of like guerrilla marketing scheme where they're just like throwing boxes all around
Okay, so
downtown.
just to be clear, your conspiracy is that Prince Street Pizza is littering Toronto with their pizza boxes
Yes.
as a marketing
Yes.
tactic.
But they're not the first to do it. It was a Red Bull marketing strategy. I think they did this like 20 years ago. They were trying to break into London because I guess no one in the UK had Red Bull. And what they would do is go outside like clubs and like just like busy hotspots and fill entire recycling bins, like exploding out with just like empty
Red
Red Bull
Bulls.
cans, which is so smart because it's free cans that you have like lying around. And if I don't know, I think in the back of my head, I'd be like, oh, Red Bull. I saw that like at the bar, and then I guess people liked them. Like,
I think even more for pizza, because I think one, pizza is kind of once someone has like a pizza joint, I feel like it ends up being like their pizza joint, and so like I don't think a lot of people are
Joint.
just like you know like going around and I mean maybe I don't know, but it's like once you find like the pizza you like, it's like that's a pizza you're gonna order. And so I guess like yeah, adding the social proof around okay everybody's trying this, it's like you kind of just need someone to try it once. You have a good product, you know potentially you've won that customer with like a nice LTV.
right. Yeah. I had it yesterday. It
Was it
decent.
good?
It was okay.
There's like thick pizza, right?
Yeah. It's like very like doughy.
Yeah, I like thinner pizza. When I was in Miami, I had this like pizza. We went to this place called like, fuck, I wish I could remember the name of it. I can't remember, but it was like this like the thinnest, crispiest pizza with like this is gonna sound weird, but it's like the pizza was warm, and then on top of it was the milk from like a burrata ball, just like over it. So you had this like hot cold contrast, and then truffle oil. It was by far the best pizza I've ever had. Shout out to my friend Noah from Social Snowball took me there, and he was like, dude, I'm gonna show you this pizza. And he like overplayed it, and I was like, okay, dude, like whatever, it's pizza. No, it was
Okay.
outstanding.
Well, right by my house, there's that place with General Tao chicken pizza.
That's too fat ass.
And
for
I
me.
drove by it. I drove by it today. It's actually not just a pizza place. It's a pizza place Chinese restaurant
Oh, okay.
combined. So
That's
we'll
interesting.
try it once.
A little fusion.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
All right.
So I got this in a newsletter I'm subscribed to from James Clear. And I thought it was like a good question. So which habit which habit is least aligned? Which habit do you have is least aligned with the person you want to become? That's
Man,
deep.
you've already thought of your answer to this
Yeah,
question,
I
and
had
now you're
some
putting
time
me
to
on the
think.
spot. Which habit do I have that's least aligned with the person I want to become? I feel like the answer is watching YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Like that's probably the biggest thing. I don't really watch TV shows. The story behind that is when I dropped out of university, I was like, I'm dropping out of university. This is like a quote unquote loser move. I'm also not gonna like sit on the couch and like watch TV being a dropout. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna offset with like dropping out of university with just not allowing myself to watch TV for a year. And so it kind of just like stuck that I just like didn't watch TV, don't watch Netflix, I don't really watch movies anymore. But what slowly like filled that space was like watching YouTube content. And I would say if we were like look at my day and do like a time study, if I actually looked at the amount of time that I watch YouTube videos, it would be like disgusting. Like at the level in which
Like how many hours?
I would say it's probably an hour a day.
Okay.
But like
That's reasonable.
I think it's reasonable, but like there's like days in which like maybe I'll miss the gym and quote unquote say that I'm busy, but I'll before bed just be like laying on the couch watching YouTube videos. And I'm actually like I have like a little hack that I'm gonna try to do. I'm getting a stationary like bike mount for my road bike, and so I'm just gonna make like a rule. I don't do well with like balance. I only do well with binary rules. And so I'm just gonna make a rule that's like I'm not allowed to watch YouTube unless I'm either like on the bike or stretching. Because I think that's like another thing for me. We both like spend so much time sitting. It's like I can actively feel it affecting my body. And so yeah, I actually ordered it 2 days ago. So once that's in, that's the new rule that's going to happen with YouTube videos. But I would say that's the piece where if I was It's another idea that I have is whenever you like are trying or evaluating your life, it's like pretend like you're like the hero in a movie. And it's like if you're watching a movie scene and you were doing a thing, it's like would you be like rooting for the guy or would you be like, wow, this guy's a fucking loser?
Right.
And I feel like if you always default to the movie scene in which you're rooting for the person to win, you're like will actually end up winning. So what is your answer to the habit?
Well, I'm curious on the YouTube thing because I watch like a good amount of YouTube, but I do feel like most of the YouTube I watch is like educational. What percentage is like bullshit versus actually you feel like you get value from it?
I don't think I concluded my educational content in that hour long.
Oh, okay.
So like, but the way I define educational content would be I'm outwardly searching for an answer on how to do something. Or for example, like the OpenAI dev summit, like that was an hour today. I'm not including that. I'm talking about purely entertainment based. I know we both like Whistling Diesel.
Yeah.
And I like people like, you know, doing stunts and all of that kind of stuff. And I also watch like a few like vloggers that I just like watching like their business journey. This guy named Max Tuning is building a sour candy company. And so they have like these like, you can make the argument that you're quote unquote learning, but it's probably better that you're reading a book, or just like researching your market and stuff like that. I found the argument hard to make that YouTube is the best source of like enriched information. I think it's like good for learning how to do specific skills, but like expanding your mind and things like that. There's definitely content out there, but I think that the wormhole is just too easy to slip into where you're just like watching stupid shit.
Yeah.
What's your answer to the habit that you have?
So my gut instinct when I first read the question was like, oh, it's got to be drinking. Stewed on it a bit more and I was like, I don't think I have a problem with alcohol.
I think you have a problem with FOMO. I think that's the only. You don't have a problem with alcohol specifically. You definitely have a problem with FOMO.
Yeah, I probably do have that. I mean, not entirely. Like I can't it's not like I can't miss a night out. But if I do think of like the person I want to become, I think for me that does include like partying sometimes and going out. So yeah, I don't think it was that one. What I came up with was diet. I think like I'm very like streaky. I'll go like kind of like you said, I'm either all in or kind of all out. So I'll go multiple months where like I'm so on point with an exact like diet meal plan. And then I have periods now where like I moved and I don't have a kitchen. So I'm ordering a ton of Uber Eats. And now especially I'm feeling like the difference of just like, I'm not even eating, it's not like I'm ordering like McDonald's, but I'm ordering like whatever, like sandwiches and stuff that's just like not the most nutritional. And I'm just feeling it. And I always seem to like, if something knocks me off my path, like I'm traveling or like I won't normally eat candy, but if I'm at the airport and I have like a 6-hour flight, I'll like break that rule, which is just like frustrating personally as like breaking promises to yourself. And then also like the performance side of it, of like how clear-minded you are and just, yeah, sticking to it.
I would say my thing is diet too. I think I've also just like started to like really like restaurants. Like when you like work a ton, you know, fitting a restaurant into like a thing to just like do in a day, it's like it kind of like brightens your day. That's, you know, it's like good food. It's like you have experience and you don't need to have prior commitment to like have that experience. You can just literally just like show up. So I feel like I've just been like eating at too many restaurants in terms of like diet. It's just, I should probably, then no matter like how healthy of a meal you get at a restaurant, it's like they're all cooking with like really shitty oils and like, unless you do like a lot of due diligence. I actually got this app called Seed Oil Scout. I don't know if you ever heard
that app.
Dude, if you are using Seed Oil Scout in Toronto,
there's nothing.
There is literally nothing. It's the most depressing app in the entire world. You can literally eat at like Impact Kitchen and like one vegan restaurant.
Yeah, I know.
That is the only thing. It's like, I'm going to delete this app. This doesn't solve my problem
I know.
At all. But yeah.
There's some chain that just announced they're going to stop using, Sweet Green, which we don't have. But yeah, I mean, do you still have Factor, the meal delivery service?
I have that. The only thing I don't like about that is that it comes in plastic and they say that it's like whatever, non-leaching plastic, blah, blah, blah. I still feel like putting plastic in the microwave for 2 out of your 3 meals in a day is just like not a good option.
I think it's fine.
Speaking of seed oils, I met a guy at the Hampton retreat that I went to, and I actually don't know the full background. He's in like the kind of like farming industry, and they're launching like their own version of like frozen French fries where they're pre-frying them in beef tallow rather than like seed oils, and like we're going to be like the only seed oil free like frozen fry. And he actually said another really cool tidbit about your insulin response when eating potatoes. So I don't know the actual percentage, but like let's just say you take a potato and you cook it, there's a certain insulin response. If you take that potato, you cook it, you put it in the fridge and you reheat it the next day, the insulin response is like half. I don't know the exact whatever. But I've also been seeing like some of like these like health guys like watch now, like everyone's like, make sure you're reheating your potatoes. So that's kind of interesting. Because I always felt that potatoes always made me kind of feel good.
Yeah,
like,
me too.
They just feel like, I'm like, oh, these are like meant to eat.
Yeah, I thrive on potatoes. Like meat and potatoes is just like literally all I need. So I was trying to order something healthy with a friend last night on Uber Eats, and I was just like, there is absolutely nothing that's just like, when we were in Scottsdale, they had a place, but like, I just want like a lot of like, why can I not just order like a chicken breast and potatoes or like, and vegetable, like that doesn't exist. Just like a simple kitchen does not exist. And I'm like, is it just such a small market? Are we like in a small niche of people that like want that, or like, is this an opportunity?
I think it's an opportunity. Like, I mean, but again, it really could just be like a bias of like who you're around. I wish like there was a really good place where I could like literally just order ingredients rather than meals, of just like, I want a steak and then I want this cooked at my door, like without all this bullshit. I don't want the fucking thing on top or like whatever. I think there's definitely a market. I wanted to start a ghost kitchen with you a while ago.
What were we gonna do? Smoothies. I
like crunched the numbers on it, and like I was like, I think this could be like a great ghost kitchen. One, all of your produce is frozen by default, and so like you don't have a lot of waste. You don't need to have that much equipment. You don't, and like in terms of like outfitting a commercial kitchen for this, utility, you don't need stoves, you don't need range hoods. Like you could do it in kind of places you could get cheap real estate because you don't need to have all this stuff. And then also it's just like a pretty high margin, kind of like product and things like that. But again, like that's, and you don't need skilled labor. You need someone that knows how to measure and press a button. Like you don't need a cook.
Blenders are tough.
Okay. Maybe we should open like a Ninja Creami.
Yeah, / protein ice cream.
Ice cream spot. We just have a bunch of Ninja Creamies in my basement. Just crank them out, stop working on the businesses, and become the neighborhood ice cream man.
Do you have a ring at your place?
Yeah, I do.
I just got one because I moved into the house. I'm shocked at how good of a product Ring is for like $180 or whatever the Ring doorbell is.
The software is good.
The software is great. Everything works perfectly. You can draw like a map of like the area of your house where if someone walks into, you get an alert. It's connected to like your community, so you can get like certain alerts if like someone like breaks into a car or whatever. It's so far and above any other like security. I don't even know what there was before. I've never had security before, but it's like that's a product you use and you're like, I understand why this company sold for $1 billion.
And so we were out, or I was at your house the other night, and you had got like a notification from like your other house that like someone, what was the notification you got?
I think someone lost a cat. And
yeah, so like it connects to your community and then, connects you with other Ring users, kind of similar to like an AirTag. And we were just like, bantering back and forth of, I don't even know how this came up. We're like, imagine like a Ring dating app where it connected you with just other Ring users. And then you could, this is a far-fetched idea.
This is your idea, not mine. Just for the record.
This is my retard idea. You could literally just connect all Ring users and you could set how far you want, your prospective like partner or one night stand to be. And then what you could do is like someone could literally just like come up, ring your doorbell. You get a visual of them and you could just be like, accept or deny. And it's like the biggest like in-person booty call network, Ring dating app. I think
and the door just opens.
And the door just opens, and it's just, it might work better for like certain niche communities rather than the general pop. But I thought it was like a funny idea that we should include in the podcast.
Imagine the fear of getting to someone's door and just like, what are they gonna do? Click X or check. And then what happens when it's an X? It's just like
turn around and go home. You just turn around and go home.
Get an alert.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's a good app for some stalkers.
That's probably true. I've also like I've been reading a lot about one, I was like scrolling through TikTok, and I had seen like a bunch of people start posting about Gap, like the kind of affordable clothing brand, being like, Gap is like really crushing it, or like girls being like, get your mans to Gap and all this shit. And then it made me think of this idea that I had read about a while, where it was stock trading based on social arbitrage. So the whole strategy, and there's entire actually like hedge funds like based on this. And so the idea is based on like literally social sentiment, you make stock picks. And it was funny. I was with you, and when I kind of like brought this up, and I was like, oh, let's like look at Gap stock. And it was up like 40% in the last like 6 months. And so I think it's like a pretty interesting strategy generally in terms of like picking, especially like consumer product stocks and things like that. Like this also kind of aligns with like the Ninja Creami story and things like that. We have like so much like inbound data about what the actual market thinks. Like they're, you know, the smoke and mirrors of like Wall Street and like P&Ls. It's like, it's very likely that, you know, I mean, maybe this only pertains to the retail trader or something like that, but that like the actual like success of a company's stock might actually come full circle, where it's like actually just like product and customer feelings about the company. And I think that'd be really cool, because I think what it means is the best companies and the best products win.
Right.
Which I think is kind of cool. And I'd watched a YouTube video a while ago about a guy that had done this with Abercrombie. Like Abercrombie was like super cool, and we were like 13, 14, and then it had like a pretty slow period, and like now Abercrombie's like cool again. Come back,
yeah.
And he had like done a similar strategy, and it was like 100x or something,
right?
Or not 100x, 100% gain on just, he was like, oh, people are talking about it on TikTok, buy the stock, and then
right.
When their next earnings call came along, it was like, oh, they did well,
right? Yeah, it's interesting. I actually, a long time ago, I'm always on LinkedIn, and when I was doing sales, I was like, well, this is interesting how you can see what the company I had seen was Lululemon, and what I realized is like, most of their employees, I forget the distribution now, but like 70 or 80% of their employees were based around like product innovation, like research and development. Which sounds stupid for clothes, but like apparently they do a lot of research.
They definitely innovate in
clothing. They do some stuff, but they have thousands of people doing this. And I was like, I bet you a decent stock picking strategy would be to like look at a company, break down their headcount of like, if you're all like salespeople, you can probably bet that company like will, in the long term, like their product will suffer, and then in the long term, like their stock will come down.
Or you could at least make the assumption that at least their growth is predictable.
Right.
If it's like a sales company, it's like that's the whole idea. It's like it's predictable revenue, and if you hire more salespeople, you get more revenue. You're essentially buying revenue with salespeople.
Right.
But where you get asymmetric returns is like innovation and things like that.
Right.
So I think
yeah, like headcounts. If all the people are in like engineering, product, R&D, like that's probably a company that's going to be innovating. It's just a matter of like how long are you willing to wait for that, and if this thesis is even right.
Speaking of innovation, you have a note in our like show notes about a $30,000 Ferrari.
Yeah.
This is something we were actually going back and forth about the other night.
Yeah.
And we're like, let's save it for the podcast.
Yeah.
So give me your pitch on the $30,000 Ferrari.
Okay. Toyota Corolla. Take off the body. Take a Ferrari body kit. Put it on the Toyota Corolla. $30,000 Ferrari.
I mean, they have that. It's called kit cars.
So like but it's not the same. I think a consumer car the closest thing to this is the Subaru BRZ, but I think the new ones are ugly and whatever. And I think they could have gone further with it. Why is it that only the $300,000 cars look like $300,000 cars, and the $30,000 cars look like $30,000? Like, there's no reason that a Corolla couldn't look like a Ferrari.
There actually is. So I after we had this conversation, I went and I started like searching a bunch of Reddit feeds about why do affordable cars look affordable and why do expensive cars look expensive?
Okay.
There's a bunch of like information, like a bunch of people like chiming in. Some people work at car companies being like, we were at an all hands meeting and like someone just said there's no money in small cars, and so that means that they just don't put any effort into like, and I'm talking about like physically small cars. And so just like generally the margins in small cars are less, and so they put all of their like effort into like large cars, but like most large vehicles like SUVs and things like that are just like never like design focused or utility focused. And so there's that piece. The other one that is actually like pretty tactical that I had kind of read by this person talking, and he was saying that, you know, one thing that helps subconsciously improve the look of a car is the number of shut lines. And so the idea of a shut line is like that's how many panels are created. And so if you look at like a cheaper car, they have like a quarter panel and then a door panel and then a separate piece, and there's all these like lines, and it's kind of looks like it's like put together and it's like a thing. When you look at like a Ferrari, it's like beautifully crafted with like arches and things like that. And essentially what they were saying was like, from like a design and engineering perspective, it actually costs more money to create these body panels that are larger, rather than building these like small panels. And then in terms of the assembling small piece by small piece apparently is easier than doing these like large panels. And so there is like an actual like tangible like engineering problem. But I've also always had this idea that you're thinking, which is just like, if you're an affordable car company and you're like trying to make a bet, you're a publicly held company. It's like, just go hire the designers of fucking Ferrari,
right?
And like take a bet or something like that,
right? Is the Corolla the best you could come up with like whatever budget was set?
I think what you could also make the argument for, and this might be a little bit, but like it's the same idea as like, show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome. You know, Ferrari is like, they're like, our price point is $400,000. We need to convince someone that this is worth $400,000, and then because they have like higher margins and things like that, that means that their people are paid better. And so like their incentives are aligned to creating a car in which would be warranted that someone would spend an obscene amount of money. If you look at the incentives like a affordable car company, the actual incentives are to create a car that's as good and as cheap as possible,
right?
Not as good looking. It's like the value propositions of the two products are completely different. And so I think that might kind of fall into it too, is like, what is the car actually trying to accomplish?
Right. Yeah. And every company needs to focus on their thing. Yeah. But maybe it's a new car company where
maybe it's a new car company.
It's for people that want a car that looks like a Ferrari, but they want to spend
I think that's like a really small niche market between the ages of 17 and 22 men.
Yeah. Well, this reminded me, like when I was, I think like 15, I was actually looking to see like, does this actually exist? Does someone did it? And I found like some scam website. I don't even know if it's still around, but
right. But then you need to like install these body kits, and like that has like a $10,000 installation fee.
Yeah,
it's like
you get like
it's a lot easier to just like make 300 grand and buy the
easier said than done.
Yeah, I think what's the last thing you have in here? It's just you just have Zinn 1.1 billion cans.
1.1 B. This is a tiny little note, but Zinn apparently, according to Twitter, sold 1.1 billion cans last year.
That's pretty wild.
When you think about the fact that there's 7 billion people, like, and they sold 1.1.
I will also say, I think that you and I were on the Zinn train before all the hype.
Before the hype, I think so.
100%. We was when we were living in Arizona during like COVID, and we're like, oh wow, we found this like product, and we're just like, wow, this is fucking awesome.
This is a good product.
This is a good product. I was actually listening. I was listening to this interview with Theo Von and Tucker Carlson, and like Tucker Carlson is like the biggest Zinn fan in the entire world. He's like, it's like the best thing for male vitality. It's just like you have a Zinn and it's like you drop it on the table and like, but it is a good product. I mean, it's a good product with diminishing returns, which is like I think the case with like most substances.
Diminishing returns in terms of how much you feel it,
and like the benefit to. Like,
because you've stopped a few times.
I've stopped a few times and then started a few times. It does, and like there are these like guys on Twitter that are literally just like, you make more money when you consume nicotine, and like I think it's true. And like I don't know, like I think there is something to be like there's something to be said about like my angst when I have like nicotine consumption. Like I'm just a little bit more anxious, and like in a good way, like in a way that's just like. And like part of it might be like actually like just like a physical thing of like I put it in, I'm like I'm gonna get to work, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel better, but
I've tried to think about it so many times. Is this something worth stopping? But I mean, I just don't think it has any negative effect, and it's something that I like.
People said that about everything.
What do you mean?
Like every sort of like nicotine delivery system has always been.
Oh, I see.
Has always been. There's like even when like vaping was first, I was like, oh, this is the best thing, and we were talking about like Juul last week, and like then it becomes, you know, like I think. I mean, like potentially, but you also have to just like take into account these things are made in factories. You know, like you're not actually consuming them. I don't know. Like if I were at a crap stable and there was a bet for like Zinn's that has 0 side effects long term and like has some side effects long term, like I think I would put the bet on has some side effects long term, just by the way history plays out.
I think like anything you're consuming every single day, multiple per day, there's a risk.
Do you do anything else for like focus? Any other like products?
No, just like coffee, working out, like standard life stuff. Do you?
I think the only other thing that has like stuck, and like right now I haven't taken it probably like 8 months or something like that, but like modafinil has been one
Right.
that, like
You
that
showed
is
me
like
that.
that is like a wonder drug in my opinion. It's like Adderall but not an amphetamine. It's not as like up here. It's more just like in your body and just like getting you zoned in. Essentially it's a drug that they give to people with narcolepsy, people like that fall asleep by accident. And I had found it based on like a Dave Asprey blog post, and then I
Right.
just like went down this like huge rabbit hole. Originally found it from like a guy selling it on like our version of Craigslist here in Canada. It was literally like the posting on the classified site was just nootropics, because like that's what I searched. And then I was like, do you have modafinil? And he's like, I have modafinil. And it was just like it was this like Chinese immigrant that was going to school at University of Toronto, and we would just sell modafinil.
Interesting.
But and then there was like the whole overseas
Yeah.
pharmacy thing that was whatever. And then my last trip to Mexico, you can literally just like walk into the
You can just
pharmacy
buy it
and buy
anywhere.
it, and I bought a ton.
I think a lot of places you can just buy it over the counter. I think in the UK you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, you first showed it to me. I was taking it probably 60% of like work days. It definitely increases focus. I feel like, I don't know if it wore off or whatever now, but if I have it, it's just like, it sometimes impacts my sleep, like especially if I have like full one. I'm just like lying awake in bed and I'm like, this
Yeah,
isn't
you have to plan
worth-
it out. It has like a 12-hour half-life, so it's like you have to take it in the morning to not have it affect your sleep. The only like side effect that I found like acutely and anecdotally is it makes me a little bit less patient, which like could also be a feature. But like in terms of like if someone like comes over and like just talks to me when I'm like in it, and just like, fuck you, like, can you fuck off? So that's the only like side effect. And I know I read a blog post from Tim Ferriss a long time ago, and he was taking it for I think like 4 years. And he was like, the reason why he stopped it, he was like, nothing this good doesn't have any side effects. That was his like logical reasoning for stopping, which is like coming from Tim Ferriss, like it's not as logical as it usually is or as like calculated, but I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a good thing. But I think that's pretty much everything we've got for this week.
Yeah.
If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe if you're on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, wherever you're listening. And this has been another episode of Done This Week. Talk to you later.